Jeff, thank you for being here. Were you satisfied with the AP poll this time?
I mean, I'm never satisfied with the AP poll, but I know it's never going to be because it's been talked about. All these people have jobs to do. They're covering a team and they have to write articles and everything. There's no way they can watch all these games. What's funny about it, you and I are covering the Big Ten. We have a hard time watching all the Big Ten games, let alone all the top 25 teams. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of a crazy system. And what you get is people who are slow to react to how things have changed. The SEC is not dominant like they were 3 or 4 years ago, but the AP poll is just slow to react to it. And so we're always going to be dissatisfied, JR. I hate to say it.
That we are, Jeff. Truer words may have never been spoken. All right. So, like I said, the AP poll at this point doesn't really matter anymore. To me, it's more kind of comedy. Like Ole Miss just moved up over Texas Tech because they struggled to beat a 3-7 Florida team. So I don't know how that gives you that much credit after Texas Tech just beat BYU last week, but whatever. That is apparently, I don't know if they're getting credit because Oklahoma beat Alabama or what the deal is there, but I think we're going to see the same out of the top three. I think it's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M. I don't think they're going to move Texas A&M down for nearly losing to South Carolina. They might. I mean, you could see Georgia, maybe be number 3, but I don't think Texas A&M would go any further than number 4. And then at number 5, that's going to kind of be where the chaos starts a little bit. Is it going to be Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon? Could Oklahoma jump up there to a number 5 spot after beating Alabama? This is going to be kind of crazy here. The main thing I'm going to be watching is Alabama was number 4 in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. Oregon number 8, Oklahoma number 11. What happens with Alabama? Do they, does it look like what it is here where Oklahoma moves up just behind Oregon and Alabama moves back? Or is there going to be a situation where Oklahoma moves ahead of Oregon and maybe Alabama stays ahead of Oregon as well? Jeff, how do you think this is going to play
out? Jared, I'm trying to find the document I created to talk to this. So
Jeff needs his data. We get it.
In the transition over, repeat the question again because I was just looking for it.
So I was talking about how Alabama in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings is number 4. They obviously lose to Oklahoma, who's number 11. Well, smack right dab in the middle is Oregon, who is number 8. They're tied for 6th here. So obviously the AP poll is giving Oregon credit over Oklahoma. I tend to think y'all forgot this 7th rank. No, Oregon and Texas Tech are tied. They're both 6. They both are tied with 1,299 points. So, right. It's kind of a crazy thing, but yeah, they're tied with 1,299 points, and they're both 6. It's kind of crazy. I had the immediate reaction as well, like, what? Hold on, how are they both 6? But then I looked it up, and yeah, they're tied there. So it's pretty crazy. But Jeff, I'm curious your thoughts on if you think that Oklahoma will get up and leapfrog over Oregon. Do you think that Alabama will be in front of Oregon as well? Do you think they'll be behind Oregon? Or do you think Oregon will stay in front of Oklahoma and Alabama? And take into consideration here that the College Football Playoff Committee has been lower on Oregon than the AP poll has as well, which is, I think, important distinction here.
Yeah, so Oregon last week was 8 in the playoff rankings. They're going to have 1 loss. Bama's going to have 2 losses, of course. And that one to Florida State, it's a stinger as Florida State continues to struggle. JR, I really believe Oregon will be above Alabama and Oklahoma in the playoff committee. I have way less worries about the playoff committee than the AP poll. I think those are like 2 very different conversations. I'm not one to believe that the playoff committee is influenced by the AP poll very much. I know that some of the early rankings had some of the same teams. I think it's just because a lot of people would say that's the way it is. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and the consensus is Ohio State is number 1, although everyone would say Indiana has the better resume. But they're like, we still think for certain reasons, Ohio State's more impressive, right? Like when you see their players and Jeremiah Smith and so, but getting back to your question, I do think I have Oregon and predict that the playoff committee is going to select Oregon 7th, Oklahoma 8, Alabama 9. So I actually think it's interesting. I think Oklahoma is going to be one above Alabama, JR, which that one's maybe a little bit more shaky with it if it's going to play out that way, but that's what I kind of predict.
So you would say that this would be relatively the same with the College Football Playoff Committee, but you would swap Alabama and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I have Notre Dame actually 10th. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that to me is the big question. I feel is between Alabama and Notre Dame, right? Two lost teams. You have Notre Dame who lost early to a couple of good teams, and Miami's playing better now. At least they look a little better, so that's good for Notre Dame. But Bama just lost, right? And they looked a little shaky there in that fourth quarter, especially. So that will be real interesting. I'm predicting the playoff committee will have Alabama 9 and Notre Dame 10. So I'm swapping those versus the AP poll, JR.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to give a shout out to Pit Snipe here. He says Ducks taste better to him. That's why he always votes for the Ducks. Pit Snipe, been a while since you've been here. Appreciate you being here again, Pit Snipe. We've missed you here in the chat. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That is the logical thing to do. I think that is the correct thing to do and what they should do. But it does not feel like Alabama has been treated like a one-loss team this season. And I do think, and I think it was John in the chat earlier, I've missed his comment, apologize, John, but I do think this playoff committee is going to look at the win that Alabama has over Georgia, and they seemingly have not, punished Alabama all that much for the Florida State loss. I mean, I get it, like Georgia's the next highest one and Alabama beat them, but at the same time, like that's a really, really bad loss that Alabama has to Florida State early on in the season. And that was one of the reasons why I felt like the AP poll and the College Football Playoff Committee were so similar, is because you should be able to know Florida State's not a very good football team. The AP poll just kind of reacts to things as the season goes on. The benefit of being able to rank teams in week 10 and week 11 is to know, okay, Florida State beat Alabama, but Florida State's terrible. That's a bad loss for Alabama. And so Alabama should have been knocked down more, and you should have seen a team like Oregon get some more consideration there. But unfortunately, that never happened, and it's kind of one of the reasons that led me to think that the College Football Playoff Committee rankings reflected more of the AP poll than I would have liked. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion you and I can get into.
I wonder if, these guys do know, and this is something that everyone forgets, the first game there's no preseason. I'm going to be Mr. Obvious here. There's no preseason in college football. So imagine, even in high school, my son's team, we played a team a week before we had our regular season start. We got a game in, right? We did everything except kickoffs. You don't have that in college. So, and I think the committee knows first games, stuff happens, right? You got a lot of young players and everything. And so I think they do maybe downgrade a little bit those really early results, especially a week 1, JR. That's what I'm kind of thinking. And there's no doubt we know that a big win later in the year, or maybe a loss early in the season, hurts you less than a loss late in the season. It's been pretty consistent, like for years. But I'm kind of guessing here. I'm like, trying to think like a committee member.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. Again, we could go on for this for hours. The only thing I'll say back, and then I'll let you respond, and then we can move on from here, is that if that were the case, I don't think Texas A&M should get as much credit for the Notre Dame win as they get, because it was against a team with a first-year starting quarterback and CJ Carr. They lost to Miami early on, but Miami, they've not been a team that has done all that well facing, in my opinion, better competition on their schedule than Texas A&M has faced. I mean, Texas A&M, sure, more talent, all that stuff, but Texas A&M has faced all 4 SEC teams that have fired their head coaches. They faced Mizzou, who's starting a third string freshman quarterback, Mississippi State, and then they just faced South Carolina, who they almost lost to, that fired their offensive line coach and their offensive coordinator in the middle of the season. So, like, I hear what you're saying, but then I'm like, why are they still giving credit to Texas A&M, and the only thing I can think of is that they're not actually taking into account, the early on stuff consistently, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but Texas A&M, they're still undefeated, right? I mean, so if you're winning all your games,
yeah, but BYU was undefeated and they were 6th or 7th.
Yeah, but we know their schedule's not. I mean, the Big Ten and the SEC has tougher schedules than the other conferences. So when you say, I mean, I would say, to me, all the stats point to the SEC and the Big Ten are
yes,
the kings
the
of college
SEC.
football.
Yes, the SEC and the Big Ten have tougher schedules than the Big 12. But is the bottom half of the SEC really that much more, difficult than the entire Big 12? Maybe a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's exuberant, like anything super high. So anyway, we could go on and on about this.
I just want to, someone said, why do they play the games? And that's a legit question. I'm not saying the early games don't count. I'm just saying also what the committee, what you've seen from the BCS era all the way through is they tend to rate the later games. If you build momentum, they give more weight to that. It doesn't mean the early games mean nothing, and they shouldn't. And so I agree with you on that. I mean, it's important to account for that. But the reality of all this is we don't have enough cross-conference games to really judge these teams. That's the problem with this whole thing, right? There's not enough good games to judge them. And so we're all based on conjecture and got to use the stats and everything, which is why, damn it, when the playoffs happen, I want the SEC to be playing the Big Ten as much as possible. If we get a Big Ten on Big Ten game, I'm going to be pissed because I don't want that. We want to see on the field who's better so we can tell them to shut up.
Yeah, honestly, I am totally in favor of Jerry rigging the rankings to make sure stuff like that happens. At this point, it's like, okay, pick the top 4 teams and then just try to pick the rankings in such a way that it's like, okay, well, we don't want Oregon to play Ohio State in round 2 or something like that. I'm all for that because I don't want to see that again. All right, so back to it. I agree with you that Alabama should be behind Oregon. I do wonder if that win over Georgia is going to hold a lot of weight, though, because I could see a potential scenario where it's Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Alabama, Oregon, and Notre Dame. Like that is what I could see, and a lot of that coming from, well, Alabama beat Georgia, and kind of the thing you were saying about Florida State. It's early on in the season. How much are we actually to take away from them and stuff like that? So, that would be kind of my thing that I could see Oregon being behind Alabama in the rankings. Again, I don't think it should happen, but I could see it happening.
I could see it as a worry, JR. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that Oregon's ahead of Alabama. Like I'd be willing to put money on it.
Okay, well, let's talk about the next Big Ten team. I think that has some conversation here, which you have them side by side in the rankings. So I think this one's probably going to be a little bit closer. USC and Texas, because USC has 2 losses. Texas has 3. Obviously, Texas had the loss to Georgia, which was a blowout loss. They had the loss to Ohio State, which was close, but that was also early on in the season. So you can kind of talk about, the inexperienced quarterbacks. Both of them had young quarterback type of stuff. Both of them leaned on their defenses a lot. And then you had Texas losing to a bad Florida team. Now, USC lost to Illinois on the road and Notre Dame on the road. Illinois, a French top 25 team. Notre Dame, a top 10 team. I don't see the case for Texas to be above USC, but if the kind of bias that we've seen for Texas this season, which has been just pretty incredible, remains, I think we possibly could see Texas over USC, and if that happens, I will blow a gasket.
JR, so I did the rankings for my prediction for playoffs far enough just to get the field. I didn't even go into the teens. But now that you say I'm looking at it, that is a good question. I really believe, though, JR, the fact that Texas really got away from them in the fourth quarter, if they would have played, because it was looking like it's going to be a close game, if it would have been less than a touchdown to Georgia, Texas 3 losses, I could see the committee giving them a lot of credit, right, in putting them over USC. But because Texas lost by whatever it was, there's 3 touchdowns, right? I really think USC will be above Texas for that reason, because of that scoring disparity. And
mean,
I mean, it's more than that. I mean, Texas looking inconsistent throughout the year and struggling on offense. It's more than that. But I think that's going to be a big factor. Bottom line, I'm saying if they would have only lost by a touchdown to Georgia, then there's a pretty good chance. But I think USC will be above them because they lost by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Of course, all of this is going to make it very interesting because the key question on Tuesday night, that Zach and I are going to discuss. If Zach and I, if Zach isn't here, I'll try to have Jeff on. I don't know if you can be here or not Tuesday night, Jeff, but to discuss here is going to be like, if USC beats Oregon, can they both get into the playoffs? And it's going to matter a lot with what the committee does, because if the committee has Oregon up at 6 or 7, then I think there still is a possibility of that happening, especially if Washington, looks impressive enough to, get some notoriety there. But that's difficult with the loss to Wisconsin. But we have to see how the rankings play out, because if USC is not a top 15 team, I don't know if that happens. I think they have to be a top 15 team in order for that to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate on that one. It's a great question. If USC beats Oregon for everyone, then basically they both have 2 losses. So the question is, can both squeeze in so that the Big Ten gets 4 teams in the 12, not 3? You can't answer that because it all depends on what these teams do, like Oklahoma and even Ole Miss. Well, Ole Miss might, if they lose, if they have 2.
Don't
anyway,
get me started on
you
Ole
have to
Miss,
see
Jeff.
how.
I will go off on Ole Miss if we get too far down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities of what other teams need to happen, though, to even project in this week at this time if both USC and Oregon would make it as 2 lost teams. Way too hard to even
for sure
speculate on it, right?
For sure. There's no doubt to me a 10-2 USC team gets in, but there is some doubt to me that a 10-2 Oregon team gets in. And then the other piece of this, go ahead.
No, that'd be right, because then you look at how many, for the committee, it's not how many top 25 teams per AP, it's for our ranking of the top 25, how many wins you have against our top 25. In that case, Oregon wouldn't be looking that great. Yeah. USC would be looking better, right?
Yeah. Richard thinks that Oregon will still get in with 2 losses. I think they should. But like, this is what I talked about when we first got the Week 10 college football playoff rankings. I said, if Oklahoma beats Alabama, we're going to be in a precarious situation here. If Texas does what they're supposed to do and loses to both Georgia and Texas A&M, no big deal there. I mean, you're also you have to look at Vanderbilt here as well. Vanderbilt plays Tennessee at the end of the season, and Tennessee is going to look like a better win later on in the season. If Vanderbilt beats Tennessee, that's another team that could hop up over Oregon as well, if Oregon does lose to USC. Full disclosure here, Jeff and I are both picking Oregon to win that game. So it's not like we're saying, USC is going to win the game. But I do think with the way USC is playing this season, to just completely rule it out and say it's not going to happen is, not that's not intellectual, in my opinion. I think that both teams have a good opportunity here to win it. Oregon has the better opportunity, but they're both good football teams.
Here's other important things that need to happen for this conversation about 2 lost teams making it. This is why Illinois winning their last 2 games is a big deal, right? If they do, then USC can say, well, we lost Illinois, but they're a top 25 team. So, and it was close, right? We were right there. So little things like that, JR. And even Michigan, like playing Ohio State, let's say they lose Ohio State, if it's close, guaranteeing Michigan stays top 25. Like the Big Ten actually shouldn't want Ohio State to blow the doors off of Michigan for fear they could fall out of the top 25. All things like that matter as well in this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that, I've gotten some Michigan fans that have been very unhappy with me in the comments when I say this, and that's fine. I'm not out here to make every fan base happy. I've had Ohio State fans who aren't happy with me. I've had Oregon fans that aren't happy with me. Probably the only fan base I've not had very many fans unhappy with me is maybe Indiana. But I am very favorable to Indiana. Anyway, I'll just admit it. I do think that with everything else going on, especially with the Oklahoma win over Maryland and the possibility of the USC win over Oregon and the Vanderbilt win over Tennessee. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I don't think it's a lock that they're going to get into the playoffs. I mean, you're looking at them jumping 8 spots to get up there. Oklahoma just beat number 4 Alabama and jumped, what was it, 3 spots to get up to number 8. Of course, this is the AP poll. I know it's not the college football playoff rankings. We'll see what happens, but it's just I just don't know if that's going to happen. And I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I just don't know if the committee will give them enough respect for that.
Yeah, need to look at other teams and everything, and even for Michigan, Oklahoma continuing to do well would matter, right? The fact they lost to them, but the higher Oklahoma is, the better. So that's why it's hard. There's so many variables here. And I know in the chat and everything, some people talk about rankings and everything. For the committee, what matters is now they'll factor in Oregon beat Penn State when Penn State still had confidence and everything. They'll factor it in, but that won't count as a top 25 win in the committee's eyes because Penn State won't have finished in the top 25. So it's where you finish. So, Illinois, whether you played Illinois when they were outside the top 25 or whether Indiana when they played them was 10th, you're going to get credit for beating them based on how Illinois finished. I think, JR, wouldn't you say? I mean, I don't think they're going to say, oh, they beat the number 10 team in the nation, Indiana did, if Illinois finishes outside the top 25. No. If they finish outside the top 25, that won't really count ultimately as a top 25 win.
Right, and that's my point about the playoff committee. That's what they should be doing. I don't know if they've always done that, but that's what they should be doing, because they should not be going off of other people's rankings. They should be going off of their own rankings, and at the end of the season say, okay, full body of work, this is where this team is. Illinois, most likely if they keep winning, they're going to be ranked by the end. Heck, Iowa, with the way they've been treating them, if Iowa wins their last 2 games of the season, what is it, Nebraska, and there's one other team that they're playing, I forget who it is off the top of my head, they should be a college football playoff top 25 team, and that'll help give Oregon and USC a little bit more credit as well. The only problem is that, Tennessee, after losing to Vanderbilt, will most likely be above Iowa and Illinois, I would think. Maybe not Illinois because of 4 losses, 3 losses, but they will probably still be above Iowa.
If it's 4 losses for Tennessee, they wouldn't be above Illinois with 3.
I don't think they would, but you just
I'm confident of that, JR.
Okay.
They would not.
All right.
They would not. Yeah.
All right. Dave is coming in here with another super chat. Appreciate you, Dave. $5. Very generous. We appreciate that.
That's a loaded question.
Who of the G5 schools do you think will make the playoffs? San Diego State, Navy, Tulane, North Texas, and James Madison. Well, James Madison, I mean, last time I looked at their schedule, they have like nobody left on their schedule. So I think they have the best chance with them, where they're slotted at right now. They're the highest ranked group of 5 teams. So as long as they don't screw it up, I mean, at the end of the season, they have Washington State and Coastal. Well, Washington State could give them a hard time, but it's also at home. So Washington State is traveling, not across the country, but close to it. And then Coastal Carolina, I'm not aware of how good Coastal Carolina is this season. They're 6-4. So,
but isn't it the case the committee, they didn't reveal beyond the top 25? That was a big certain podcast saying, we want to see how you were ranking the group of 5 teams that were outside,
Yeah, I think Memphis was their biggest outside it in the first one, and then Memphis has fallen off, and then USF lost to Navy. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it just kind of depends on what the committee puts out there. I am, for the life of me, have no idea how I'm going to be able to guess what the group of 5 does with the committee, because the committee doesn't want to seem to give them a whole lot of credit, which is fine. I'm not necessarily saying they need to. But I would think going off the AP poll here, it's going to be either James Madison, North Texas, or Tulane. I think James Madison probably has the best chance to finish the season undefeated.
Another thing that was talked about in some podcasts too is like, everyone gets why we're including, they decided to include a group of 5 teams guaranteeing to get into a 12-team field just to give them something to hope for. But if you get a group of 5 team that's not even top 25, it's like then you're giving whoever is playing them a huge advantage, right? Whoever the 5 seed, just it's a colossal advantage, almost like unfair. You know what I mean, JR? And so if that's happening a lot, where you get like a mediocre group of 5 team, I think I could see further changes happening from that. I don't know what that would look like, but and maybe with the 16 team field, and then you got the one group of 5, it's not as big of a deal, right? Okay, the one group of 5 is in the 16th spot. Your reward is you get to play the number 1 and get your butt handed to you, and you're gone anyway, right? And no one's going to get bent out of shape having the 1 seed get an easy thing. That's a reward. That's a good reward for being the 1 seed. You know what I mean, JR? So if they go to 16, that probably takes care of itself.
Yeah. No, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think at the end of the day, if you are not ranked, and this goes for any conference champion, not just the G5, if you're not ranked, even if you win your conference, I don't think you should get into the playoffs if you're not ranked by the college. Like, because Duke could possibly win the AC, not now because they lost to Virginia, but before they could have possibly won the ACC and made it into the playoffs, but they might not have been ranked. Like they lost to Tulane and other teams. So, like, if you're not even ranked, whether you're G5 or ACC or whatever, which is kind of crazy to think about with the ACC, but if you're not even ranked and you win your conference, I don't think you should be able to get in. Like, I think it has to be 16 or 12 of the top 25 teams.
Yeah.
In my opinion.